Okay, lovely. Wonderful. Here we are. Here we are. Katie, I'm not good at like the whole starting something with an introductions. This is my really awkward, like, hello, we're doing this thing again. This is the third provision episode, which is very exciting. And actually, it's perfect, Katie, because you're such a big part of how this all has started. So, yay.
Hey.
Wonderful. Well, I should do like a proper introduction of who Katie is and um, how you came into my world. So we have been connected for I don't know how long, but we got connected on the internet land where I connect with all the lovely people. And um, we recently, well, we had a few different public conversations about like presence in our homes and what we experience as like our life speaking to us in the most intimate places in our home. And then that conversation flowed us into provision, which landed us here. And we've been working on some projects behind the scenes with that, which has been really fun. And you've been such a gift to my life in that way because you get to help me work through all the nooks and crannies of things that are just like just very high sensational. So yeah, it's really fun. And I'm excited that we get to have these conversations. And really, we're just we have this actually all started because you and I have these conversations every week. And then I was like, I want to turn our calls into a show. So yeah,
And here we are.
here we are. Perfect. So thank you. Welcome. Wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Although it's weird because I actually feel like you're kind of my co-host who just hasn't been on any of them yet. Yeah.
And I've arrived.
And you've arrived.
Um, I'm ready to riff. I've got a thing that came to me. I'm ready to jump in.
Why it's best to have you here because when you're here, you'll just have something, you'll just be like, I want to go off on this. I'm like, good, take over.
You say 4 words and I've got 17 dots to connect.
Go for it. Let's go.
Okay, so our conversation a few months ago started with the noticing practice of just like noticing how we were walking through our homes and how that affected our experience of our homes. So kind of this idea of something's happening inside of me and it's kind of reflecting in my home back to me.
Hmm.
So an example that I come back to all the time is when I would wake up in the morning and I would kind of be rushing around and I would notice I was rushing because I was stomping. Like I could hear my footsteps on the floor. And it's like, it is 6:30 in the morning. Nobody needs to be stomping through their house. And as we started entering into this conversation, A, I noticed I was stomping through my house. B, I'm like, what is that all about? Why do you what mood is this that you're stomping through your house? And most of the time, it was a couple of different things usually, but most of the time it would be, oh, I feel this rush to get my day going.
Mm.
It was on days that I actually like gave myself not enough time to get ready. It was on days that I had all the time in the world to get ready for the thing. It was on days when the day was all mine. I literally had nowhere to be rushing to.
Yeah.
So, kind of being in that practice with you has transformed my ability to tell what's going on within me by just like things I'm experiencing in my like noticing because my environment's helping reflect that back to me.
Hmm.
Fast forward, where that started off with like really small little things like slamming cabinets, like open my really difficult to open dishwasher door, and like all the like things that would flood my system from that. Um, the noticing has gotten broader and broader. It's like reached a broader scale to where I keep hearing myself repeat the phrase to myself, like, let life reveal you to you. It's about me. It's
Mm.
not just about like, at first it was let life reveal itself to you, which is a different thing. Like they're two different things, but I've just been really in the witnessing of actually, like, how do I want to be right now? Stomping through the morning, as soon as I became aware of when I started doing that, I caught myself more easily.
Mm-hmm.
And in the moment of catching myself and giving myself space to just be like, what is this all about? I also gave myself the space to be like, hey, what would you rather be experiencing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I would turn on a song and dance through my house. Sometimes I would just like slow my body down, like drop into my pelvic bowl, walk from there instead of like walking from like speed walking, stomping, like rush from my chest walking I was doing. Um, so letting life reveal me to me. And I was just sharing with you before we jumped on, I came across the phrase, there's a difference between self-love and
Mm.
what did I say? Loving being yourself and kind of that internal, like turning inwards versus just being and letting yourself be experienced without all of the like inner chat that can interrupt that.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that little teeny tiny noticing practice has turned into this full blown. I have trained myself to let the world reflect back to me just how much I love being me.
Mm. Oh, I love that so much. Oh, you know, it's great because we actually haven't had a discussion about this since we did that. It's been some time. So I'm so delighted to hear these reflections because it's one of those things. It's really funny because so we had an intentional 40-day practice and it was prefaced with like that being the focus of my life the last few years, but it still comes up. And to this day, I will still have PD tell me like I was sitting downstairs and I heard you walking upstairs and it sounded like a freaking dinosaur was stomping around. I was like, oh, like, oh God. And as you're sharing it and the way I'm envisioning it, it's like, well, it reminded me of the day I fell down the stairs and injured my ribs. Literally because I'm like, well, for one, I had fuzzy socks on, so that didn't help. But also through this, like noticing the way you walk through your home, I think, and the provision of letting like life reveal to you who you are is there's a key distinction between um living in a fabricated reality we build in our heads, like a mind game, which I will so admit, like that lesson of having an injury and experience of falling down my stairs was like, oh, I know for a fact I was in a hell of a lot of story in that moment. Like there was a lot going on as I was walking down my stairs. Um, and it was a great revealer to me of the difference between like how intentional I am about every single little thing I do. And I don't just mean like how intentional I am about this interview with Katie. I mean like how intentional I am about opening up the laptop because um it's like obviously most of the things that we do now around our home are mindless um because we don't have to think about it. Why would we have to think about it, you know? Like we know what we're doing. But at the same time, like the contrast of that is even with the things that we don't have to think about, that we're so accustomed and familiar with, is there a way that we can still be intentional in the sense of like curiosity? And I named this in a particular form to you the other day about, I was like, okay, I was struggling with this. And so I told myself, pretend like it's the first time you've ever done this. It was not the first time I had ever done it. But I told myself, just pretend like it's the first time so that I could get out of my head and into my body. And it actually did wonders for me. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing because, you know, I experienced this with learning something new that I've never done before as an adult. But what about everything else that I do that I'm going to keep doing every single life? Like, how do I kind of remove Groundhog's Day while also very much having the same routine every single day?
Yeah, and I think what strikes me here is get out of your head and into your body. And a lot of times when people say that, like my interpretation of that is, oh, just like drop the energy from here to here. But in reality, when I'm actually doing it for myself, I'm paying attention to how I'm experiencing, like opening the laptop. I've got this fun little like crocodile pattern laptop case. So it's like, it feels really good. So I didn't actually think about this before you use that example, but I'm going to be like feeling up my laptop case now. I'm like,
I'm dead. That's incredible.
just whipping it open. It's like, ooh, this is so fun. Like it feels so good. And like that little thing brings me back into my body. Like it shuts off any other story I might be having about what's about to happen when I open my laptop.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I get to just like steep in. There's something different that happens when I'm like dropped back into like the experiencing of this physical meat suit I'm wearing.
Yeah. No, totally.
And then
Yeah.
it does
Yeah.
something too where it's like, oh, I get to feel this thing and it stirs something up that then there's this like transformative power where my attention has been shifted just a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'm bringing like a different energy to the next thing that, happens after opening my laptop.
Right, because you were so in opening your laptop. And okay, you know what this made me think of last night? I don't remember what I was doing, but I was um what were we doing? Gosh, we were doing something really mundane, PD and I like something we often do, but I was just having this moment about it. And I said to him, I was like, you know what this makes me think of? He's like, what does this make you think of? I was like, this makes me think of this fantasy I have. We're sitting in Mykonos, Greece, and we're sitting by the sea, and our feet are like dangling over this like big ledge, and the water's really blue. And I'm like detailing this like to a T, because I really have this beautiful vision. I'm like eating an ice cream cone and I'm sitting in the sunset and it's this big grandiose vision that I'm like, oh, it's gonna happen one day. And it is. But what happens for me when I'm like envisioning that is like this really like sparked attention to the sensations of the experience. And so I think what we were really trying to do in that practice was flip it from I can't wait for the day I get to Greece to sit there and be like in this ecstatic loveliness and to be like, oh my God, I'm playing cards right now with my boyfriend for the sixth time this week. And I am just in this ecstatic loveliness about, and I know it's not always really easy to do that because sometimes there are like layers of crap that are covering that really inherent state. And so, how would you say you have experienced that like uncovering of it being there versus going to get it?
It's so funny you asked me that question because I've had multiple instances in the last week that have like, I'm having this delicious experience and then my brain goes somewhere else, like to the next thing, or, oh my gosh, I get to carry this energy into the next. It's like,
Mm,
stay there. Stop worrying about what's coming next. So
hmm
it's a relatively new practice for me, but um I you hit the nail on the head. Like this practice for me, like we have flipped it inside out where I think I've come into a greater appreciation, putting more attention on what is happening in my highest imagination and what that's flooding me with and
mm,
letting that flood me rather than have an imagination and take it somewhere else. Like one day I hope this happens, or oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. Like whatever the thought patterns start kind of spinning up and takes me completely away from the sensation in my body. And
yeah,
from Joe Dispenza's work, like the imagination, what's happening in your thoughts floods your body, and all of those reactions that happen in your body actually like have to do with what shows up in your realm, like in your world.
hmm
And I think what's really powerful about staying with the feeling is it it's an like it's real in your imagination, but then it's real in your body. Your body is your subconscious mind. So
yeah,
you're like syncing up what you're consciously thinking and what you're subconsciously thinking. And then one of the things that you and I kind of stumbled upon in that practice was, oh my gosh, I'm starting to look for evidence. Like the feelings that feel good, I want to continue carrying them with me.
oh yeah,
So I start to look for the evidence of what I want to feel. it might not be my entire reality, but there might
Mhm.
be one little thing. And in one of our calls in that group, I talked about we did it over the Christmas season, and I have my tree set up, and then this year I bought this cool little pillow, and it says cozy up,
I will
and
never forget the pillow. Will never forget the pillow.
I've got it sitting on a super cozy, cute little blanket. It's like the most picturesque little Christmas corner. And I primarily sit in the opposite corner of the room. So I sit like looking at this corner, and I still have that pillow out. I'm constantly getting the reminder like, oh, you're cozy right now. Cozy up. Like there are things about my living room and the rest of my house I want to change, but that pillow is like sending the signal to my entire system. Woo,
Mm.
like everything that the idea of cozying up gives me is just like I get to receive it again in that moment, even though some of the particular details aren't like what I want them to be in my mind.
Yeah. Well, that part, I think that it's like this started for me a few years ago when I was doing some like, I don't remember from where, but like some manifestation practice. And uh I obviously had, very clear visions of what it would look like, what it would feel like, what it would be. And one of them was some experience with like a group of people I really loved, sitting around a table having a meal together. And yeah, I don't remember all the exact details, but I did this on an evening and I was in Omaha seeing my family. The following day, I went to have a meal with some family members. We were like having breakfast together. And I love my family, but they were not the people that I had envisioned, this like group of people I love sitting around a table together in like a really beautiful place. And we were in Omaha, Nebraska. Like this, it wasn't it, but I made it. That was the first time I was ever like, no, I'm gonna find the evidence right here, right now. I'm sitting around a table, and I will tell you, it was probably the best meal I've had with those particular family members in my entire life, simply because I remember walking into the restaurant and being like, oh, it's happening right here and right now. And that was like the feeding of the dream to come to life. And how many times could I keep doing that? Even with what you said, like the mind part was like, this ain't all it. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. You can tell me it's not it all day. This is it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I have one of my current collaborators right now. He keeps reinforcing this message that like there's a difference between manifestation and like making miracles. Manifestation, it's a lot of like it kind of comes from your ego. Like,
Mm,
here's the thing I want, so I'm gonna like map it out in my mind and how that works, and then it's gonna show up eventually according to whatever your practices are. And what I heard in your story is like that was no small miracle that you had such a lovely experience in a moment you weren't like with a group you weren't expecting to, in a moment you weren't expecting to. And what I see in that is you were holding a vision, you were holding something in your imagination and what the felt sense of it was, and you surrendered the details of it.
yeah.
You let go
Yes.
of what this needs to look like so that the details could be like, you're not in charge of the details. You're in charge of holding what the thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also your job. Like once you surrender that, it's also your job. Look for the evidence of it. And you even said,
Mm,
like, I made that happen. Like, I made that happen for myself. You only made it happen for yourself because you were like, you didn't have to make anything happen. You were holding it and decided to enter with that lens, I guess, kind of that intention, that lens that this is what I'm looking for in this experience. And you found it. Seek and you shall find, ask and you shall receive. Like, this is how these things work. And then, um, like that practice of letting go, which we talked about in that 40-day practice, like there's something really
mhm.
interesting about how um this practice of I think that's one of the things that makes it feel like we flipped this idea of what's around us inside out and what we want. How do we get what we want inside out? It's because, oh, like I have to surrender, but I'm like holding on to a thing and it's the thing I actually want to find. And I'm surrendering what the details actually are. So technically, I can probably find the thing I'm holding on to in every single thing around me.
Oh, yeah. Yes. It's like Okay, you and I we were just working on something before this, and there was something I wrote down. Well, you kind of led me to it where it was like break in this moment, there is no longer distinction. Oh shoot, can you still hear me? Okay, I'm just gonna unplug this. There was a distinction, or there was no longer a distinction of God and me, right? Like we were so, it's that play, and I really have come to discover um in the realm of like be it manifestation or like something we're looking for or dreaming about or envisioning is quite found in that place where there's no longer a distinction of it's outside of me, and there's no longer a distinction between it's like I don't have to do something specific to make this happen. It, you know what it led me to recently was I started playing with, I'm going to write something down that sounds really fun to me that I would like to experience in my life. And then it's almost like I send it off in the mail and I don't touch it anymore. And oh my God, it's the most fun way for me to play with God because I'm like, that requires a level of like, um, well, I don't know a better word than surrender, but just like literally being like, I'm not going to make this happen. I'm just going to write it down and be it at the will of God. I start with smaller things that I can sense I don't have an attachment to. The bigger ones, I find myself like creeping back into the notes of writing it down and peeking at it and being like, it's not working. Like it's just what's happening. So yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, it reminds me, my little practice is I wonder what, like, I wonder when this will happen. I wonder, and you were on a call, it was like a really snowy morning one morning, and we jumped on a call, and you're in Georgia, I'm in Cincinnati. I was like, oh my gosh, you have to see the snow that's happening right now. And I literally said to you, I wonder which one of the wonderful men in my life is going to come snow blow my driveway. Like kind of like behind my back, like crossing my fingers that this is going to happen because otherwise I have to go out and shovel my driveway, which isn't the end of the world, but like sometimes I have to shovel my driveway. Sometimes my neighbor or my dad shows up with a snowblower. And
Yeah.
literally, as soon as I said that, I heard the engine start and I was like, oh my God,
It's
instant.
so funny. Well, and it like removes, so that's the other aspect of this that I even been playing within my relationship is watching myself like have an envision of something I would crave. And oh God, let me pause and say, like, this is not to discount, obviously, like I'm not saying, let me preface, I'm not saying I expect a man to read my mind or to discount like the authentic genuineness of sharing the desire. But I've been playing with like the nuance of feeling some type of way within myself about how I want to experience him. And then I don't say a thing. And I kind of watch the details start to, and I'm kind of like, what the fuck? Like, is this for real? Like, is this really happening this much to a T? And we'll notice it with each other because, I mean, we've been playing with it a lot lately where one of us will have a thought, the other one will kind of like start to play it back to us almost immediately. And we're like, okay, like this is the level we want to play with or play at in relationship. And it actually is the level I like to play at in my life is where yes, direct communication, all the things, but at an even greater level where the direct communications is not like, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm actually just going to show up in a certain energy and you're going to know based upon a like a receiving that you're going to have in yourself. Like, it's not a direct, I offer my energy, he gets it and he responds back to it. Cause that even still feels like a little bit of manipulation. It's, I offer an energy to the room and
Yes.
God is this whole essence of my life. So be it at God's will, I'm going to receive something back. And that's going to be like the fluid continuum of like, we're going to keep this going and flowing. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I love this. I didn't even know that that day that you said that, someone showed up immediately. And so it's just perfect.
Yeah, hmm. I'll say the practice we've been in has caused me to shut up a lot more.
Yeah.
Like, I think part of it is like I'm just observing what's around me. Part of it is I'm just like steeping in the yumminess. Part of it is I'm in the imagination and like letting that flood me.
Mhm.
And part of it is like I'm not trying to dictate or manipulate how it's happening around me. I'm just like, just kind of like waiting and watching and what's going to happen here and
Yeah.
unattached if it doesn't happen this moment. And so it's really cool to hear how that's starting to show up in your relationship.
Well, you really impacted me with something you said once where we had a call scheduled, and I think you forgot, or like you remembered last second or something. I don't know. We ended up getting on a call and you were telling me, you were like, yeah, I've just been in this thing where like I just trust that things are going to happen when they're meant to happen. And you just had this very like chill energy about your schedule and like showing up to a call. And I was like, damn, like, yeah, I'm a little uptight about these things sometimes. Um, and I've let that be the case in projects that we've been working on because, I'll get this like antsy, like, oh, I want to get this out there, like I'm really antsy about it. But there's a deeper sense of like, I want to create from the place where I genuinely trust and believe I don't have to make anything happen. I'm a co-creator with God, and I'm a writer. And so I'm going to write these things because it flowed through my life. I'm going to present it as an offering to the world and like, let's just see what that does. And in the business world, as you and I both know and talk about, like that's quite foreign in like an entrepreneurial sense. It's foreign to think that we could just play. We could just see what happens. We could fuck around and find out.
Yep. Like, no, you have to have a strategy and you have to have a plan and you have to have deadlines and who's doing what, by
Oh,
when,
oh,
like when, where, how. It's like, oh, no,
yeah.
let's just play. Like, what's alive right now? Let's play with that.
Yeah. And that existence within like, having schedules and, you're going to be doing something soon where you are genuinely going to have to be somewhere at a certain time and like there are stakes involved, but I wonder even still with those stakes involved, is there not at all times a just God, it's like a very divine level of trust that we can have access to if we choose to, regardless of what we name as like, this is a higher stakes scenario of the schedule. I need to be on top of it. This is a lower stakes scenario. What if none of them were like that? And what if really I just did end up exactly where I needed to be at all times?
You know, I think I've shared this with you before, but I years ago had this circumstance that introduced me to my parking angels. Anytime I'm going somewhere and I think I'm going to have a hard time finding parking, I send my parking angels ahead. It has never failed me. Like I have a parking spot and it's usually like smack dab in front of the door of where I need to go. Like my parking angels show off all the time. And so
They show up.
recently it's occurred to me I had a lot of wonky scheduling things last year and there have been times when like I'm cool with it. Like I used to be super uptight about my calendar and it just stressed me out too much and I'm like whatever. And it occurs to me that once we reconnect, there is something that has happened in the time between when it was originally scheduled and when we actually connect. Something shifted that needed to shift that made our connection more powerful. And
Agreed.
some outcome happened that couldn't have happened beforehand. And so now I have
Mm,
calendaring angels. Like there are angels that know better than me what everybody needs. I'm not trying to
mhm.
force anything. And so I'll talk like something will shift and I'll be like, oh, what are you guys up to today? I trust it, but what's going on here?
I love it. Oops, I had something on my camera screen. Oh, I love it so much.
That's another, to your point, that's another level, like another way of like letting go and like letting the divine come in and do what it needs to do. Like we humans are not actually in control of nearly as much as we think we are. And the more I almost feel like the more we can just like enjoy ourselves, live in our lives, the more we have the capacity to actually receive the provision of all of life.
Oh,
Like
it's true.
you're stressed out, you're tight, you're constricted, things aren't going to flow as well. You're clogging the pathway for things to come into you
Mm,
or for you to be received by others.
hmm.
Right. And so it's like stressing out puts so much debris in the field.
Yeah.
oh, when you relax, actually, you're so accessible to the things that you want. And when you're relaxed and in tune with what you want to feel, it's like an automatic protection against what you don't want to experience.
Oh, an automatic protection against. Oh God, I feel that.
I've got a story about this. So, um, I started at a gym earlier this month, and the first few days I went, I was kind of in that mode. I haven't like used this like workout weightlifting equipment in like 8 or 10 years. So I was a little intimidated and like, oh God, I have to remember how to do these things. I don't know where I'm starting with my weight. People are going to look at me and know I'm not, no, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, there's a teeny tiny smidge of pride there because when I was in high school and college, I was like a beast at weightlifting. So like I took pride in like doing those kinds of things. And now I'm like, oh God, I'm an idiot. I don't remember how to do any of it. And of course, like the slightly narcissistic idea that everybody's watching you while
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing
yeah.
your thing.
Totally.
um one day I just kind of had this shift and I was like, you know what? I'd actually like rather like there are new people here. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just going to take my time getting to know what my new routine is, and being gentle on myself kind of made me relax. And then I had this experience where there's this at the same time that I go in the morning, there's this group of older retired men that walk the track, and they have adopted me as their walking buddy over the last few weeks.
Oh, cute.
One of them, because I am like just deciding to be relaxed and choosing to find evidence of I belong here and I'm enjoying myself and everybody else is
Mm.
enjoying themselves here. Like we're all like working towards our goals. Um, one of the guys, the gym has a sauna and steam room, and they were all getting off the track. I got there late, so I was going to go off into my workout. And they said something about they were going down to the sauna. And one of the guys was like, do you want to join us? Now, earlier you said something about fabricating mental constructs and like letting that get in the way of how you're experiencing yourself. A few years ago, a version of me a few years ago would have been offended by this dude, like inviting me into the sauna. Like, what are you trying to get at, sir? But
Mm.
like January 2024, Katie is like, I'm choosing to enjoy myself. He couldn't have possibly meant what that version of me would choose to make that mean.
Oof.
You know, like, ooh, that would be like, what a creepy old man for saying that. It's like, no, no, like my desire to stay in a place of enjoying myself doesn't even clock that that could be misconstrued as a creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't take it as it was just like, oh, ha ha ha, no, I'm out of here. Like, no, we're parting ways right now. And it would have made me like be a really awkward person around him if I would have held on to how I would have interpreted it. But all of this started from the root of no, I'm going to experience myself while I'm in this environment. And it's great. I've got all these like new buds at the gym. At the moment, they're all mostly older men
I love that.
interacting with me, but it's uh it's really fascinating how I can notice certain things just having a completely different way of landing with me when I'm moving through life, like coasting through,
Mm.
relaxing, and just choosing to like it's so annoying getting fired up about things anymore. I don't want to feel like that. They're
Yeah.
very few things I'll get fired up about anymore.
Yeah, it's like there's um it's a lens. Like, I've talked about provision is like provision, it's the way we see. And what I've noticed is it's like, what happens if I offer my consent to what I'm experiencing? Because I'm sure at like on like a spiritual level, I've already consented to the entirety of however long this life happens. So instead of resisting that consent I offered before I came to Earth, not to get hyper spiritual about this, but I mean, truly, like that, I trust that there was a level of consent already offered for every soul. And so while I'm here now, being offered like just nonstop opportunities to meet that consent, why don't I play in the consent? And that playing is, it's going to look different. Like there are times oh God, it was really lovely said by a beautiful woman, Tamar, the other day, where she was like, sometimes um that looks like stepping back and observing. And other times it's like fully stepping in and like she said it so differently. I wish I could remember the exact quote, but that's the way I interpret it. It was like, there's two ways I'm going to do this. I'm either going to step back and just like witness and observe, and my discernment will be key. The other way is I'm just going to be like, I'm a full yes, and I'm just going to enter into this and like, we'll see what comes of that. Either way we choose, it's one of the like, we're either fully in it or we're fully not. And I think that spot of like having a big, how did you say it? Like big, were you saying? Like a big opinion or like, oh, getting fired up about it. I
Yeah.
think it's just that, it's like the in between. It's the place where we're like, I'm not choosing into this, but I'm also not observing this. I'm resisting it and I'm pissed that it's happening in my life. So before comes like the growth and the change and the evolving as we enter into all these new desires. It's like the fully accepting what is happening all around us. Um, I have I have a firm sense that we're never not being offered provision. And until we can let ourselves accept what is right here, right now, we don't move into those next phases of like, let's grow through this into something even bigger and greater. Or maybe it's not something bigger and greater, but technically there is a growth evolution through it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Mm. This is fun. I love the way this all came together, Katie. It's like it's really so fun to talk about these things with you because I learned so much about myself. Um, and I feel like every time I leave our conversations, I'm dancing with life in just a newly juicy way.
It makes my heart so happy you just used the word juicy because it is so juicy.
I
Like
probably used it because you use it a lot. It's caught on.
I it's I have to name, like, I love how you have this loyalty to like what's the right thing? Like what's the right orientation, and you keep, and in the simplest form. Like you're it's really refreshing to play with you and work with you because um you're not like pontificating in the realm of like here's how the theoretical says it should go. um
Mm,
you're like, we get to talk about like we're learning from our lives because we're sharing about like what is happening to
yeah.
provision, what is happening as we walk through our house. Like you keep it so simple, and it's like turning learning inside out. I'm not learning the principle first and then applying it. It's I'm learning from my life first and then applying what I want to keep doing, and just disengaging and dropping and letting go of what I don't want to keep experiencing. So it's been really fun to strengthen and deepen into that with you over these past few months.
It's oh God, I love it. And yeah, just one last thing I'll say on that, and I know we got to wrap up here is I've, I'm so passionate about this. Like, we all have an opportunity to learn everything that we look for online, whether it be like a YouTube video and like, thank y'all for watching, cool. Whether it be through a YouTube video, it's great that we're here and I do it and I go watch and I consume and I learn and I'm a student and like that's all really beautiful. But you're not going to actually find out what you're seeking to find out until you find it in your home. And your home will tell you everything you need to know about what's true in the existence of like your energetic frequency, your thoughts, your emotions, like everything you want to know. You could go find it out in your home right now. And I can promise you that. So I'm really passionate about that. And I'm very grateful like that we've been able to be in that dance together. And oh God, I just so look forward to the ways we get to keep like offering that back to life. More to come soon. I won't say more yet because we'll just wait.
Still percolating.
Yeah, still percolating as I'm in like the uncomfortable sensations of percolation. So yeah. Well, this was great. Katie will be back soon. We'll do more of these together and maybe you'll co-host on some future interviews. So wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to leave the people who watch with a ponderance of like what's one thing that I could see coming through in my home that I might have been resisting to accept. So I just leave you all with that and feel free to share any what comes up. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Katie. I love you.
I love you too, girl.
Okay, we will stop here.